And that's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
All right. Couldn't have control there at the end. Today is Friday. That's right, Greta. Hello and welcome to Climate Change Roundtable, broadcasting live every Friday to talk about the topical events of the week that are just insane related to climate change and the science behind the entire issue. Joining me today is the usual squad, except for Steve Milloy. Steve returns to the show to discuss the protests that are sweeping across the nation. We kind of thought you'd be the perfect guy to have on just to discuss, all the junk science out there, which is Steve's website and Twitter account. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Anthony Watts. Anthony returning as usual. How's your day going?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just how you doing, Anthony?
Oh, okay. I'm doing great. And, you mentioned we talk about the crazy events of the week, on Friday and the science behind it. Yeah. Well, sometimes there's no science behind it at all. And this week in particular.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, this will be known as the infamous glue episode.
Wait, what was the title we had for this? I loved it so much, whatever it was. And Linnea, good to have you on as usual.
They know not what they glue.
They know not what they glue.
Is...
was that your suggestion? I can't remember. You or
no? It was a collaboration effort between Donnie and I.
It's some good stuff.
Yeah, we're having fun with that one. No, it's been an interesting week online, and it's been a really fun morning on Twitter.
Yeah, right. I actually haven't paid too much attention to Twitter. I heard that Michael Mann is almost distancing himself from this movement. Then I went to Michael Mann's Twitter.
The Guardian too.
The Guardian.
Yes, the Guardian had an article also basically saying this is counterproductive, and they're right. I mean, me agreeing with the Guardian, that's like epic.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, so I read an article from the New York Times this morning on this issue as well. I'll actually go ahead and pull it up on screen here. But you can see to a degree that the insanity of this movement is passing what even the corporate media is willing to cheer for. Steve, you're on with Fox News all the time. I see your videos. You post them on Twitter. I'm sure you've been tracking these protests across Europe. What's your opinion on just all of this? Is the climate alarmist movement just going so far that it's now reaching a point where even the mainstream or corporate media just can't support it?
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that it's obviously very stupid to glue yourself to priceless artwork and then think that the public is going to embrace you. But these same people have caused a lot more harm over the last 20 years than just gluing themselves to priceless artwork, right? I mean, I would argue that what's going on in Ukraine right now is really the product of what I like to call climate idiocy. Europe embraced it. They started getting rid of their coal plants and their natural gas plants. They enriched and empowered Putin. And as a result, and when he had them over a barrel, then he invaded Ukraine. And so here we are. And then, of course, you throw in Joe Biden and his anti-fossil fuel policies. And these things are, those are very serious. I mean, it's one thing to glue yourself to a painting, which is awful, especially a priceless, Vermeer or whatever. And that definitely deserves opprobrium. But I mean, let's not lose sight of the larger picture. These people are working on destroying the world. Putin's threatened nuclear weapons, and this all started and made possible by climate.
Yeah, Anthony, Linnea, do you have anything to say to what Steve just said?
Well, the thing that strikes me about this is that these climate protesters have become villains essentially now on both sides of the aisle. I mean, the left is kind of like, well, they're not quite villains, but on the right, they look like supervillains to us. And so I was thinking about the analogy the other day with Star Trek, where we had Klingons, which was always a funny name, Klingon to something. Well, now we have gluons, right?
I like that. That was pretty creative.
Well, just label this whole group as gluons,
Yeah, you said the right views them as supervillains. I gotta say, this is Just Stop Oil. It's hard to look at these two and think like that's a supervillain. Just with the pink hair and all. But I get where you're coming from. But,
their superpower is stupidity.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now we can look at them as supervillains. So just to give everyone watching a little bit of background information here, I'm reading from the New York Times. This article is "How Far is Too Far in the Fight Against Climate Change? Climate protesters threw tomato soup on a Van Gogh painting. Were their actions reckless and counterproductive, or were they justified in the face of a climate emergency?" So obviously, this entire article from the New York Times is framed in a way like the climate emergency is coming and agreed upon. Just like how far are we willing to go to get people to worry about it? Which, if you truly think it's going to be a catastrophe, I would say you're justified. And if you don't argue you're justified, I would argue that you don't think it's truly a catastrophe. But all right, so going to the article, how concerned are you about climate change? Do you think enough is being done to stop it? Have you ever taken any actions, big or small, to protect the environment and address climate change? In recent months, climate activists in Europe have glued themselves to painting by Picasso and Botticelli, thrown mashed potatoes on a Monet, and tossed tomato soup on a Van Gogh. After tossing the soup, one activist challenged onlookers, what is worth more, art or life? So the paper kind of doesn't, or this article never takes that hard of a stance on it, but it does continue to say like, yeah, the climate emergency is here. We need to take action now to prevent further damage, which that's the entire premise of that, is that climate change is the reason we have any damage at all. Steve, when they're using weather, I mean, they'll use the hurricane that recently swept through Florida as an example that climate change is getting worse and we're seeing more extreme weather events. Is there any validity to that statement?
Well, no. I mean, look, it was a hurricane in hurricane season.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what you expect him? And of course, it's been a relatively quiet hurricane season. I mean, there wasn't a named storm through August, which is the first time that's happened in literally decades.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't really see how they can say that there's a human fingerprint to that. And, when you think about it, even their human fingerprint stuff is nonsense, because they'll say, oh, well, it intensified the storm by 4% or so. Well, if you got a 12-foot storm surge and you're saying that, it increased the surge by maybe a couple inches, well, that's not really much of an argument against the storm surge now, is it?
Yeah.
And of course, none of their claims can be shown to be true. The latest one, I think they've given up on the notion that hurricanes are becoming more frequent, or that storms are becoming stronger. And now that their argument is that they intensify more quickly. Of course, there's no data for that, right? You can't. There's no way to. It's just the latest myth that they're going to try to surf until they can get what they want.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have seen this. I know you have, Anthony, but the climate activists glued themselves to the floor of a Porsche dealership. This is personally my favorite of all of these.
By far, it's the best one.
Okay, so we're all ready for this. All right, so I pulled up something here, but just to give people a sense of what's going on, these climate activists and they are is it Just Stop Oil, the group name? I can never remember.
They're also wearing Extinction Rebelling logos. You can see there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously some young people, but they went to a Porsche dealership somewhere in Europe, in the UK, glued themselves to the floor, and then had a list of demands, which they put on their Twitter. Actually, I'll pull that up in a second, of things that they wanted before, they were willing to leave. Now, the playbook across Europe when this happens has been for the police to get called, for the protesters to be removed, whatever, and then they hope to get media attention. This story was funnier than the rest of them, in my opinion, because Porsche did the exact opposite. They're like, okay, stay. They didn't call the police. They just turned off the lights, turned off the heat, and were like, we're going to go home, have fun. And they just left him there. And the protesters were furious. They're like, well, they didn't provide us they asked for like a bowl to pee and, poo, to defecate, whatever words you want to use. And then they were mad that like security was shining lights in their eyes at night. Like, what do you expect? It's not like this business owes you anything. And they were mad that they didn't have the ability to get food delivered to them, which is just like, how entitled are you if you think you can?
Yeah, you would think they would have thought this through and got Depends or something,
Yeah, right.
This is something that's really common, though, for the Western activist, college age or graduate student age activist.
Yeah.
What they anticipate is that they're going to call the cops. They're going to get a good photo op of being walked away by police officers and put into a car. And then they get bailed out immediately because the bail money is part of the deal when they sign on to doing these protests. This isn't like people spontaneously doing this. This is coordinated. They have people set up in advance saying, we're going to get you out of jail when they bring you to jail. It's all part of the plan, which is why none of these kids ever look scared when a police officer comes to take them away. They know that they're going to be fine. So it is really satisfying to see it go wrong for them. It's just this minor way. You get left overnight at a car dealership.
Yeah, if it were me and I ran that car dealership, not only would I, let them stay, turn out the lights, walk away, and not give them potty bowls, I would provide them with some entertaining music, because as Linnea says, the cops are going to come take them away. Well, I sent you, Andy, a clip of an old 60s song. I think it would be perfect to run this 24/7, 365 overnight, to keep them entertained while they're doing all that.
So I'm going to play that in just one moment, but for our viewers, we did yesterday, kind of Anthony and I were going back and forth on just like, what song would we play for the protesters, because they want food, they want water, like, let's give them a source of entertainment, let's give them some music. So I'll play all of ours. All of us on the show did provide a song that we thought would be the greatest thing we could play for them on repeat until they just decided they were done and would leave on their own. But if you all have any suggestions, in the comments, let us know. What do you think would be the worst thing you could possibly play for them? I think Anthony's that he sent me yesterday is the worst thing you could possibly play for them. So I'm going to go ahead and
experience with these protesters.
I was like driving home, listening to this in my car, just trying not to go crazy. Okay, here it is.
Remember when you ran away and I got on my knees and begged you not to leave because I go berserk?
We'll only play a second to this.
You
Don't
left
worry, everyone.
me anyhow, and then the days got worse and worse, and now you see I've gone completely out of my mind.
Too.
And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha.
All right. I got to end it there. I don't think I could make it past 15 minutes of playing that song on repeat. I literally think I would go insane. And we'll get to more of our songs too, but I just wanted to get that one out of the way first. But yeah, it is insane that these people think like they can just go and glue themselves to the man. I'm still like my mind's just on that song and just how horrible.
Linnea raised a great point. I mean, this is all real coordinated, and there's real money behind all these people because they're all getting bailed out. And I mean, I'm a lawyer. The word for this is conspiracy. And now in addition to gluing themselves everywhere, they're going around the UK, Just Stop Oil, and spray painting buildings orange. They did Rolex, I think yesterday, the day before. They went to where the Global Warming Policy Foundation, sort of a sister ally organization of ours, they sprayed them orange before. It's just always something. And all this vandalism, and vandalism is a crime. It's not civil disobedience, it's vandalism. And it's all funded. They're getting out of jail. I think it's a conspiracy. And, the UK police should arrest the leadership or the funders behind Just Stop Oil because it's a conspiracy.
Yeah, we have a little information on that. This was on What's Up With That, Anthony. So I'll hand it to you to discuss this just while I get it up on screen here. But Steve, everything you're saying is absolutely true, Steve. There is funding behind this. It's not just a grassroots organization. Anthony, do you want to jump in and just kind of explain what you found here related to funding of Stop Oil?
Yeah. And so these climate protesters are out there protesting, oil. They've gone from Extinction Rebellion to Just Stop Oil. That's the latest, meme they have. And a cartoonist in the UK that I work with on a regular basis, Josh, basically he discovered and forwarded to me an article that pointed out that these Just Stop Oil people are being funded by the Getty oil heiress. I mean, this lady, Eileen Getty, gave them 800,000 pounds, approximately $1 million US, to go do this stuff. And this is why they're able to, go buy climbing gear to scale bridges and shut down traffic. And it's why they're able to bail themselves out of jail and all these other things. And what's crazy about it is that this woman is rich because of her grandfather J. Paul Getty, who had all of this oil money from, his work with the Getty Oil Company. And so basically she's using the oil money to fund oil protest. The other strange thing about it is that there's a fantastic art museum in Los Angeles, the Getty Museum, one of the greatest art galleries in the world. So I'm wondering to myself, what is this? Is this some kind of a way to get rid of other art galleries? Some kind of a false flag or something?
It's not even about
the thing is nuts. It's nuts beyond the craziest thing you can think of.
Yeah. Well, and in addition to, the Getty errors, there's also the Rockefeller errors. The Rockefeller Foundation, John D. Rockefeller, Exxon Mobil, Amoco, his whole Standard Oil empire. They've been at the Exxon Mobil shareholder meeting since I started doing it in 2005, protesting against Exxon Mobil and wanting Exxon Mobil to get out of the oil business. Of course, ironically, today Exxon Mobil just had record earnings thanks to the climate idiocy caused energy crisis. But it's bizarre how you have all these oil tycoon heirs campaigning against oil when it's what's funded them to start with and has done much good for the world otherwise.
Yeah, Linnea, do you have anything to add to that statement?
No, I just really like our comments section.
I know.
Suggestions. I like Tiptoe Through the Tulips. That would be.
Oh, someone suggested Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Yeah, that was Bo Gus at 1213. He suggested that. That would do it for me. Jim says that he would saw his own hand off to get away from Monster Mash.
I know. I saw that one. That was pretty funny. It looks like someone may have actually suggested the song that Steve, you sent me this morning. I'll quickly just throw it up so we can get one more for the viewers. This is Stuck on You by Lionel Richie. And let's see who suggested this also. It came from Bo Gus. Bo, Steve, you both had good recommendations here.
Stuck on.
Oh man.
Got this feeling down deep in my soul that I just can't lose.
When those protesters don't get any of the food and water they thought would be provided to them and listen to Stuck on You for the 50th time, you might think that they would like some sort of solvent so they can just get out of that miserable
Maybe
situation.
maybe they would really sit down and they'd have a lot of time to think about their position.
Well, look, unlike, Andy and Linnea, who are on the young side, I lived through the 80s and I remember this.
Yeah.
This is torture.
Oh man, yeah. Fortunately, this song's not played much for me. I'm not too knowledgeable. Oh, that's funny. Let's see, private chat. Anthony, let me pull up what you sent me. 1 second. Mobile pumpkin spice.
I was thinking, if we just simply flavored the oil, maybe they wouldn't protest against it so much.
That's actually... Oh man, that's good.
Well, I think we should also point out that these priceless artworks they've been gluing themselves to, they're protected fortunately by museum glass, which is made from fossil fuels.
I hope that's the case in all of them. I was a little bit worried when I saw the guy gluing his head to the pearl earring painting.
Yeah, I saw that.
It didn't really look like it was glass. Okay, good.
Yeah. So I did mention earlier that Extinction Rebellion actually, Just Got Oil tweeted out a list of demands when they did this Porsche stunt. So here's the Twitter thread that they put out from Scientist Rebellion. We have occupied the Porsche pavilion of the Volkswagen Car Museum for more than 21 hours. We've sent our demands to the CEO of Volkswagen. I mean, they're shooting high right off the get-go. 1, come to us in front of the press and hear our demands. Which is why this move by Porsche is just so funny that they were just like, no, we're just going to turn off the lights and leave. I mean, it blew up the entire purpose of the stunt. 2, sign our petition, including the public declaration that 1.5 degrees Celsius is unachievable. 3, issue a public statement supporting our transport demands, namely to introduce a speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour on motorways. I think that's like 62 miles per hour or something. So it's not like 69. Okay. It's not the highest, speed limit ever.
No, I'm sorry. 61.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then reintroduce the 9-pound ticket and speed up the decarbonization of the Volkswagen plants. 4, waive the interest payments and cancel the debt that is owed to Volkswagen by the global south and most affected people and areas by the climate emergency. And 5, pressure the government to comply with our demands. is this just eco-terrorism at that point? I mean, the number 5 reads literally like eco-terrorism. Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, they've done this. They do this kind of stuff, but they've done a lot worse in the past.
Yeah.
I remember.
Well, no, that's a good point. I mean, eco-terrorism to me means tree spiking and
Yeah.
serious vandalism.
Yeah.
And of course, you guys are way far away from like, PLO, ISIS type terrorism, which is a good thing. I hopefully they won't go that far. This is more of a circus than anything else.
True. If eco-terrorism at least says that you're doing something that's not just comical, I guess. But the comical part about this is the follow-up tweet, which is, they denied us food and cut off electricity, heating, and the lights. However, we carry on with our civil resistance to the car industry, blocking the climate action we so desperately need. It's just like, oh man, it's just.
Well, no, if they were really serious about this, where would they go? They would go to China.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
China has 25% of global emissions. Germany could fall off the face of the earth. The UK could fall off the face of the earth. And way more than 90% of global emissions are still going to happen. So they're really, what are they accomplishing? Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. And at the same, these people don't have the, courage to go do this in China, because China's not going to just, there's going to be like a real response to you if you do it there. It's not going to be like we're just going to turn the lights off. It's like, we're going to forcibly remove you, and we're not going to wait for the doctor to get here who has a solvent.
Yeah, China, they'll turn their lights off.
Yeah, right. Oh man, that's pretty good. All right, one sec. I'm just going back to the. Okay, so also this week we thought we'd talk about why these people have ended up the way they are, and that relates to the just incredible education system we currently have in America and across the world. So we have this video, I think it came from you, Anthony, of a Texas A&M professor, so not just like a random guy.
Howdy, students.
Oh, whoops, let me start playing. Let me pause this real quick.
Addresses
All right,
yes, Andrew Desler.
Yep, so a real
kind of like, he's like the alter ego of Michael Mann.
Ooh, that's a great way to start this. But yeah, so this is a video he sent all of his students. I'm not going to talk more about it. Let's just play it and see why our students are the way they are.
Howdy, students. Want to do a short video that addresses a statement you often hear by people who are climate contrarians. That is that the science tells us that there's no climate emergency. Now, that's wrong. Okay, but it may be wrong for a different reason you think. It's not wrong because the science tells us there is a climate emergency. Rather, it's wrong because science can't tell you if something is a crisis or an emergency.
If you guys want to comment at any point, just tell me. I'll pause the video and jump in, just FYI.
Crisis or emergency are not scientific terms. There's no scientific test you can do to tell whether something's a crisis or an emergency. It's really a value judgment. And one analogy I like to use is, imagine you're trying to decide if you should go skydiving or not. Now, we can look at the statistics, the facts, and they will tell you that your chance of dying if you go skydiving is something like 1 in 400,000, give or take. But that doesn't tell you whether you should do it or not. And whether you should go skydiving, whether the risk is too great, is a judgment you have to make. Some people will look at that and say, that's too risky. I just wouldn't enjoy it, and so I'm not going to take the risk. Other people would say, oh, it's totally worth the risk because of how much they would enjoy it. And when you look at climate change, there are things that science can tell us. It'll tell us we're going to get more severe heat waves, more severe extreme precipitation events. It's going to drive sea level rise. It's going to drive more damaging hurricanes, ocean acidification. And that's what the science tells us. Now, it doesn't tell us if that's a crisis or emergency. You might look at that and say, it's not, who cares? I'll be fine. I don't really care about poor people or future generations. But it is completely reasonable to look at this and conclude that climate change is an emergency. In fact, I certainly do. So if anyone ever tells you the science tells us that there's not a climate emergency, you need to point out to them that that's a nonsense statement. Science can't ever tell you that. But if you do look at the science, it's absolutely reasonable to conclude it is an emergency. Thanks. Howdy, students.
Okay. Can you back up? Can you back up a little bit just so it shows that bullet point list?
Yeah, for sure.
That's
let me just pause this.
Further. There we go.
Yep. I'm going to make sure we get the whole thing. There we go.
And maybe you can expand that a little bit so our readers can see it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Perfect.
Great.
So more severe heat. I'm going to address every one of these points because Dessler is living in a fantasy world. He's absolutely, the word wrong is about him, not about his position. It's about him and his belief system. More severe heat waves. No, that's not happened. And there's a fight going on to get rid of a graph on the EPA website that shows that the heat wave index for the United States peaked during the Dust Bowl period of the 1930s and has not been repeated since. We have not been getting more severe heat waves. In fact, if you look at high temperatures in the United States over the last 100 years, it's essentially flat. All the gain in temperature has been in the overnight low temperature, number one. So more severe heat waves, not happening. Number two, more extreme precipitation events, also not happening. The IPCC, when they came out with their most recent report, AR6, they said there's no connection to it. They can't see a connection. It's sea level rise. Well, sea level rise has been going on for freaking ever. It's part of the rebound from the Little Ice Age, part of the rebound going on from changes in geologic situations. For example, in Baltimore, Maryland, they're talking about sea level rise inundating the streets over there. Well, what's really going on is that, a couple million years ago, there was a meteor that hit there and it fractured all the granite, and there's subsidence going on. And so the water level's going up more in Baltimore because of the subsidence. Same thing in Miami. They're withdrawing water from the water table. There's subsidence going on. Sea level rise isn't a crisis. We have managed sea level rise for millennia. New York and Boston, very old cities. London with the Thames, all of them have managed sea level rise over a period of time. And so we have more damaging hurricanes. Well, duh. Why? Because more people are building big, giant condos and houses next to the coastlines where the hurricanes hit. That's why there's more damage. You look at what goes on 100 years ago and some of the photos of hurricanes that went through those places, there was hardly any housing. Now we've got megaplexes of hotels and condos and HOAs and all this other stuff. That's why there's more damage, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's more hurricane. If you look at Dr. Ryan Ma's data, there is no increase in the frequency of hurricane whatsoever. Zilch, none, nada. It's not there. It's just wrong. Dessler is wrong. And ocean acidification, oh, please. This is the model. It's not measured. There's a paper that says we've modeled this. It's supposed to be happening, but they don't have 100 years of ocean acidity measurements. They don't exist. Yeah. It's all fantasy.
Right.
Steve.
Sorry,
so, yeah.
I got started.
No, I love it. It's great.
I got triggered.
You're doing great, Anthony. So my fundamental problem with what Dessler just said is that he says science is a value judgment, and that is the problem with climate alarmism and climate science generally. Science is a process we use to study the natural world, and the way we do that is we come up with ideas called hypotheses, and then we test them against the real world, and see how the results came out, and go back and modify our hypotheses and keep testing them until we can actually make predictions. And in climate science, we don't have any of that. We have the model is what passes as climate science, and a model is nothing but a prediction.
Yep.
And the predictions go out 10, 20, 40, 100, 200 and more years. Obviously, those are unfalsifiable assumptions. You can't test them by science. None of us are going to live that long. And yet, these guys call these models science, IPCC and the climate models drive all this policy. None of it has ever come true. None of it can be tested in the future. And so they've wrecked science into this more value judgment. If you believe it, that's your value, and if you believe it, then it's true and it's science, and that's completely false.
Yeah, when I was watching that, the entire premise that can science indicate to us that this is a catastrophe? Catastrophe is a word that is, as you're saying, a value judgment. It's not a scientific term in and of itself.
You must just hate poor people, Andy.
Yeah, obviously, but I'm still allowed to.
I did laugh when he said that. That was pretty funny. I don't know if he meant for it to come off as so straw man cartoonish, but it definitely,
probably not. There's a question in here which I thought one of you might want to just actually take on. This is from Catherine Burke. Have these hockey stick models been tested against what has happened? Do any of you want to jump and take this one?
Well, we just talked about it. No climate model works.
Yeah.
They can put together, they can cherry pick climate models and say, well, these work best, but they're really just, it's post hoc cherry picking.
Yeah.
They don't work. They can't predict anything.
Yeah.
And not only can they not predict like average temperature, but then they try to predict, future storm events. Of course, the models don't work. Can't even predict a simple thing of temperature. Because I've been on this show before, and we talked about all the different factors that are missing from climate models. We really don't understand the atmosphere entirely.
Yeah.
It's not this closed system. There's all sorts of events going on that we don't really understand, and so the models don't work.
Yeah, all right. That's that. Continuing with the whole education theme here, we have an article from, let me pull it up, Real Clear Wire, Doubt-Free America's Schools Warm to Climate Activism. So this is from Steve Milloy, and this article basically says, well, just reading from it, public school districts are adopting curricula on climate change from well-funded progressive groups, casting the issue as a threat to life on the planet that students should respond to through activism, because teaching activism is the point of school. As of fall 2020, 29 states in the District of Columbia have adopted standards that require science classes to teach human-caused climate change as a peril beyond dispute. According to K-12 Climate Action, a group that is K-12 Climate Action, a group that is part of the Progressive Aspen Institute. The school districts often rely on information provided by advocacy groups, including the Sierra Club and the U.S. Green Building Council. A Sierra Club teaching toolkit signals a wide purpose across subject areas, the why and the how of moving our entire society to 100% clean energy, and for fighting climate change more broadly, can be woven into many subject areas, including biology, chemistry, physics, and even social studies. I've said this many times, but the reason I got into this whole debate is that on a social studies exam in high school, my teacher just had a question that said, like, denying climate change is akin to denying the Holocaust. And just like sitting there in a class, it's like, wow, this is really far from the like ancient Greek history that this test was supposed to be on. And suddenly I have to make these judgments that like are, well, I'm Jewish. Like, I'm just looking at that. It's insane. But to go in, Linnea.
Yeah, this hits me hard too, because my 7th grade, basically my teachers, I had 2 teachers for all of my courses in 7th grade.
Yeah.
I went to a pretty good public school, actually.
Public too.
And they basically hijacked our entire education, and every single class that we had, they tied it to climate change somehow.
Ugh.
Whether it was our like science or social studies or math or whatever it was, they brought it up in every single class we were being taught.
Yeah.
And so it was some kind of like a climate education pilot that I certainly didn't sign up for, and I'm pretty sure my parents didn't sign me up for.
Yeah.
So and I have always felt that I was absolutely robbed by that. I did well in school, but I definitely think that my education suffered for having been forced into the situation where my entire curriculum was designed around climate stuff that was incorrect. So basically, I lost an entire year of school to nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, an inconvenient truth was a video we were showing, like, hey, here's your science class for the week or something.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
I can't tell you how many times we watched that in school.
Steve, I know you're prominent in this whole movement. Like, you're a known figure. Do you ever get just random like hate mail from high school or just younger people that are like, you're dooming the earth, like my generation's going to die? I don't know. Anthony, do you ever get it with what's up with that? I'm just out of curiosity. I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, I've been doing junk science for 25 years. I've been getting hate mail for that long. So I just, disregard it. People are invariably crazy. Even, you just show that clip of Andrew Dessler. I've gotten into fights with like the Washington Post, Capital Weather Gang. And so they'll go to Andrew Dessler and ask him, well, what's the real climate science? So we got into an argument about, the warmth in the 1930s. And as compared to today, the 1930s were warmer than it is today. And Dessler just writes off the 30s by saying, oh, that was just a random climate event. Has no bearing. These people are just crazy.
So that's a random climate event, but we can like pin random weather events to climate change.
No, he literally said that, a random weather event.
That's crazy. Anthony, do you get hate mail too sometimes?
Oh yeah, I've had more than a few. I actually had one lady, some crazy lady from Grass Valley, California, show up at my office about
really
2010, and she was absolutely convinced that I was part of a giant oil-driven conspiracy, and she was out to prove it. And she showed up at my office and wanted me to sign this declaration that I am not taking any oil money and all this other stuff, And she was just, and she didn't even own a car, and so she Grass Valley is like an hour and a half away from Chico when I was there, and she took a bus, you know, and it took her like 5 hours to get there, you know, and anyway, but she stalked a lot of people, including Dr. Judith Curry. She accused her of being on the take from big oil. And she wanted us to sign this rambling declaration. And it would have been fine if it was just simply said, I don't take any money from big oil. And that's all it said. But no, it had all this other verbiage in it that, you know, basically committed you to all kinds of crazy stuff. But after she showed up and we went to the whole stalking thing, I had another guy in Canada who said that he had some kind of dirt on me. I wouldn't tell me what it was. I don't know what it was. I don't have any dirt, you know, but I'm going to expose this dirt on you if you don't do this. Right.
Yeah.
And he kept harassing me and the moderator, Charles, for what's up with that. And this went on for months. And I finally got tired of it. And I decided, okay, I'm going to show this guy that, you know, you can't keep intimidating people. So I worked with the local police department. We contacted the Canadian police, his ISP, and the ISP said, we can't connect this guy to these email threats he's sending you through our ISP unless we can get an exact timestamp. So I created a honeypot for him. I said, okay, I've written up an admission of all of my guilt. And I put it over here on my website, and all you have to do is go take a look at it and tell me if that meets your standards, right? And of course, this is not visible anywhere else to the web except in the URL I sent to his email, right? And so like an idiot, he goes in there and looks at that. And of course, I got him on my server log, and I took the server log, sent it to the ISP. The ISP identified him, sent it to the police, and the Canadian police showed up at his door the same day and said, stop this or you're going to go to jail. So...
Oh my! Wait, that's actually
climate honeypot.
Yeah.
So, ever since I made that public on What's Up With That, I've gotten far less complaints because people know I'm not going to take crap from you. If you push against me with all kinds of crazy stuff, I'm going to push back twice as hard.
Yeah. I'm absolutely clipping all of that and releasing it as an individual video because that is just so incredible. I love that. Sorry, I'm caught up in that story. I mean, the only hate mail I've gotten is a couple things that came into like our media account at Heartland that just says we're actively making the world worse, or the comment section after the live video. People don't seem to watch the live video that hate us. They just seem to come in and write essays, long things that they're clearly being paid to write after, which is always fun. By the way, we're always happy to take questions. So if you're watching live right now, feel free in the comment section to put down anything you want us, Steve, to answer, and we'll get to it at the end of the broadcast. Let's see what we got.
I gotta say, their most effective tool has not been threatening us. It's been trying to silence us.
Oh yeah.
And as today is the first full day of Elon Musk.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up. Yeah.
We have somehow miraculously, most of us made it through the censorship. I think Tony Heller is one person I can think of who was kicked off, and hopefully he'll be back on.
Oh, they kicked him off. Okay.
Yeah, but generally speaking, I think most of us have made it through, which is incredible because I say wild stuff. Or it's not wild; it's true. Wild for them.
Yeah, I love. I mean, you gotta incite conversation. Like you do it by putting out the more. I consider myself a radical guy, radical views. Also, just one thing that I have noticed: I track a lot of our social media numbers, and on October 1st. It's not like the Heartland Institute Facebook account. It's not like we were banned or anything, but you can see that our post reach dropped like 70% on the 1st, and then the engagement levels with our posts dropped like a huge amount. But the number of followers we have continues to rise. So I can tell you right now that there's like just very obvious evidence that they're suppressing voices before the midterm elections. Yeah. So I mean, and to everyone watching this video, like, please do whatever you can to help push like this video out, like, share. It really does help with the YouTube algorithms. And I can say, like, I've seen direct evidence right now that they're doing everything they can to suppress this type of conversation. So we need your help more than ever. That's the weekly like and subscribe bit. But everything you say you're right, Steve. Did Heartland ever find out who hacked the Freedom Pub? I don't have an answer to that. Steve, you wild man. There you go. You got a fan in Gary, Steve. We have a question here from Doug Troyer, who said, "What about the ice caps here on Earth? Isn't the south one growing?" Do any of you want to take a jump on that? Stab at that.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yes, there was some significant growth in the south, the southern ice cap, the Antarctic ice cap, that happened around 2008 to around 2015. Now it's kind of just sort of holding its own. But what has not happened is any dramatic melting that they had predicted for it. And the polar ice cap in the north, the Arctic ice cap, they predicted, Al Gore and a whole host of media clowns predicted it would disappear, in 2013. And then when it didn't disappear in 2013, it would be 2015. And oh, no, wait, it's 2018. That's what we meant. Well, it hasn't disappeared. It has reached a new stable level, which started somewhere around 2007, where there was a big drop that year. But then it's kind of just hung around that new stable level. And the reason, I believe, is the industrialization of China and soot. If you go look at some of the meltwater ponds that are in the Greenland ice cap, you find all kinds of dark soot in these things. And this has been documented and scientific papers have been written about it. But the bottom line is that I believe that the darkening of the Arctic ice cap ice due to soot in the atmosphere, due to the industrialization of China and other places, has basically caused a melting of the into a new stable level. And then there's also some ocean current theories and other things. But the bottom line is it hasn't disappeared. And their models and their claims predicting that it would disappear are all flat wrong.
Yeah. All right. But damn, Anthony, you always just have these really detailed answers to questions that come out of nowhere. You are such an asset for the show. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Steve, you did bring up, I actually wanted to briefly go back to what you said there with regards to like Elon Musk. It is interesting right now, just watching Twitter blue check mark explode, saying how dangerous this is going to be and how it's going to threaten Twitter's ability to block misinformation. Love that. Twitter's ability. Yeah. Have you noticed, like, how much do you feel that Twitter's kind of been pushing back against your accounts with junk science? And have you noticed any shift recently? I mean, there's not a lot of chime yet.
So I'm kind of fortunate. I mean, Twitter, sort of made me a blue check, but then they sat on my accounts and on my account. And, when there's a Twitter purge, I've lost thousands of followers at a time. Then after January 6th, I really got whacked.
Yeah, well, did he really?
I don't know what I had to do.
What does that have to do with climate change? Like, why would they?
Yeah, no, I don't know. And the Washington Post, I like to beat up on the Washington Post and its capital letter because they're all in the tank for climate and they're always wrong, and they can't even predict the weather. And once Washington Post called up both Twitter and Facebook and said, well, why is this guy a blue check and why is he still on Twitter or Facebook? And and Twitter, I guess they just ignored them because I'm still there. But yeah, no, I've definitely been suppressed, but it's okay. I've survived. I'm looking forward to bigger and better things now. And I think Twitter, should be the Wild West. Unless you're, threatening somebody, you should be able to say what you want.
Yeah, unless you're actively breaking the law.
Yeah, I went through the same things that Steve went through with What's Up With That and my Twitter account and my Facebook account and everything else. And here's the bottom line to succeed through all of this. Just cite facts. Don't get into mudslinging or name calling or any of that stuff. Don't stoop to their level because that's what they love to do. They don't have the facts. All they've got is rhetoric. Just simply keep pushing the facts. And then if someone does say, well, we're going to take you off of Twitter because you've been spewing misinformation, if that fact is backed up by, some peer-reviewed publication or something from NOAA or NASA or whatever, which is what I do on a regular basis. I take that data that they don't want to broadcast and put it out there. They can't, justify getting rid of you because you're citing real facts from real government agencies and peer-reviewed science.
Yeah, and the whole thing has been done in this sort of star chamber format. They give you like a certain number of strikes, I guess, and once you launch many times, you don't know what they don't tell you what they are. You don't really know what the rules are. You just disappear. And Tony Heller really comes to mind. I mean, he does pretty solid work and he always backs it up with data, and they axed him as soon as they could.
Yeah. I mean, we've got strikes against our YouTube account for talking about stuff that's now accepted as, it was related to COVID, but it's now accepted as fact. And it's not like they take these strikes back. They just hold them over you forever. It's even as like the narrative changes, the hits that they take against our opinions don't. We had another question in here. Unless Linnea, I actually saw that you wanted to jump in. Do you have something you want to add to this?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that one of the most difficult learning curves for someone coming out of like public education or really anything where you have been raised since you were going through school to begin with to trust, the experts or whatever. It's a tough learning curve to find that just because someone has a PhD or just because someone is very well educated in a subject doesn't mean that they actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And for me, I have a skeptical lean, but I would like to think that someone who studied something for their entire life.
We may have
I think
lost
her Comcast just went out.
Linnea, we lost you at the last.
Did you lose me for a second?
Yeah,
right.
It was.
Okay, so for a lot of people on the climate alarmist side, especially certain meteorologists, and I hate to use the word climatologist because from what I understand, it's relatively new to be calling yourself that. But a lot of scientists, they've studied this forever, and yet repeat stuff that you can check really easily and find that it's false. Hurricane numbers, wildfires, anything like that. It's really easy to find this data, and yet they'll still say the opposite of what it shows.
Right.
And I think it really frustrates people, especially those who aren't political, like Ryan Mao, who is always he's
Linnea, we're losing
going
you again.
on saying like, you guys don't have the data.
Yeah.
Man,
it's
I can't believe this. I paid for really good internet, and it's terrible.
So I agree with Linnea. I've been in this space for 30 years, and I've done a lot more than just climate stuff. Done a lot of air quality and all sorts of public health stuff. And I learned long ago not to have any trust, for example, in the public health community. It's politicized, they're corrupt, and just I went to a school of public health, and you don't really get the smartest people going there. So they've got lots going against them, and you could see. COVID was not a surprise to me. We have a public health establishment that's politicized, corrupt, and incompetent, and we saw it during COVID. And it's not new. They've been like this for probably 40 or 50 years now. CDC used to be the Centers for Disease Control, and then they got bored with infectious disease and became Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and started worried about people, smoking and gun ownership and this and that. And they medicalized, all sorts of behaviors, and it's all just been part of their politicized corruption.
Yeah. I hope your connection works. There was, unless Anthony, do you have anything you want to add to this? Because there was one more question that came in that I wanted to put up on screen.
No, go ahead with the question there.
All right. Let me. There's so many coming in that I gotta go quick. So let me.
Jim, while he's getting the question, Jim said I'm being throttled and it's a conspiracy.
I know.
It's almost definitely Russia, Jim.
Yeah.
I put that on screen. I thought that was
you
pretty
should
funny.
definitely get onto tech support in India for Comcast and get that solved.
This is Mike in Texas. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
All right. So this question actually does come from Jim. Any thoughts on the EIA statement that we have just 25 days of diesel reserves in the United States? Linnea, I was wondering if you would want to take that one, or Anthony, Steve.
Well, I do know.
So,
I saw an article
as long
the
as
other
my
day.
connection holds through.
Go
Yeah.
ahead,
All right. So let's go with Linnea until her connection breaks. I'm kidding.
Go ahead, Linnea.
It's already broken. I have some kind of a lag going on. That's pretty clear. But yeah. So if that is the case for real, and they're not just exaggerating or misunderstanding what they mean when they say reserves, if they really mean like 25 days of pre-made, ready to go diesel for military use, because what people don't understand is all of our most important military equipment, all of it is not running on electricity from wind turbines. It's run on diesel, bunker fuel, whatever. It's going to be a liquid fuel that it's really harrowing if you start to look at the fact that we are currently in a military engagement, even if we don't necessarily have troops on the ground. That kind of thing It's it's the same thing with the strategic reserves. It's so frustrating to see them draining this stuff, because these are put in positions so that we have a backup in case something really goes wrong, or in case we're invaded, or if for some reason there's no fuel getting out. It's not supposed to be used to boost someone's poll number before the midterms. Like, it's
no, it's for emergencies, not because your policies are destructive yet and people are rejecting them, so you'll do anything you can just to provide a little relief from the situation you created.
Yeah, well, what was it? 100 million barrels of oil that they released last time. Is that the right number?
I mean, I thought it was like that a day. I can't, to be honest, they just keep releasing more and more. It's hard to remember which one you're even referencing at this point.
But the bottom line is that the what they released out of the strategic reserve compared to the global consumption during any given day was a drop in the bucket. It didn't do anything. It was just a political stunt. That's all.
Yeah. Steve, we did our benefit dinner at Heartland last week, and I made a video just pulling from a lot of stuff. One of which was a clip of you on Fox News saying, like, America has all the energy we need. We're just choosing not to use it. I was wondering if you want to just kind of expand on that idea for our viewers.
Well, sure. I mean, we have with fracking technology, we basically have unlimited oil and gas.
Yeah.
We have known reserves of coal that are, for hundreds of years. Of course, it gets more expensive. We have nuclear power. We have everything we need. I mean, energy is probably the most abundant thing in the universe. I mean, everything is energy, and so there's plenty of energy out there, and there's no need for it to be scarce or expensive. And if it is scarce or expensive, the reason for that nowadays is the politics. And there's some Enviro with his boot on the energy pipeline. I don't like to use the phrase "all of the above" because it's it's some sort of compromise from the fossil fuel industry, because we're mostly a fossil fuel based society. Nothing happens without fossil fuels. You can't build a wind turbine or a solar panel or a nuclear plant without fossil fuels, but you can't run a country without the others. But energy should be cheap, and it's a shame that it's not. And this whole once again, it's not because of this climate idiocy agenda. And, if they weren't suppressing the science, if we could debate the science openly, I think that, the Greens would have a lot less success in public policy.
Yeah. If no one has anything to add to that, we still have two more songs that we selected for how we would entertain climate protesters, which I'll just briefly put on before we close the episode. Linnea, Anthony, you got anything to add to what Steve just said?
Well, I just sent you a link to an article. About energy executives tell that they're not going to restart shuttered oil refineries in the U.S. And we're down to about 170, maybe 171 refineries in the United States, and the number keeps dropping. And part of the problem that we've got there is that putting together or restarting a refinery, or but even more importantly, building a new refinery requires a massive amount of investment on the order of about, in the billions of dollars range to put a new refinery in place. And there's all kinds of roadblocks in place in front of it, just like there is with nuclear power.
Yeah.
And so the environmentalists have basically created so many roadblocks that we're faced with basically trying to keep old refineries running. Right. And in some cases, they have to shut them down because the metal fatigues, and it's not even viable to keep it running anymore because the repairs would be so great. And so eventually we're going to have another crisis, and that crisis is going to be on refining capacity. It won't matter how much oil we pull out of the ground if you can't refine it into gasoline or diesel or the hundreds of other products that we get out of oil. You're basically left with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, it looks like
we have the same issue with rare earth minerals.
Yeah. So if there is a diesel shortage, by only having 25 days worth of reserves, is that a refinery problem because maybe gasoline has been prioritized over diesel? Anthony or Linnea, what do you think?
Well, I think in California, they've driven virtually every bit of sensible manufacturing and refining out of the state. I mean, they've been trying to shut down the plant in the Bay Area there. They are after that right and left. Any minor problem, they turn into a major news story, and then Greenpeace gets involved, and the Sierra Club from San Francisco gets a press conference to say how bad it is that we have this oil refinery here, in Pittsburgh, which is just up the delta from San Francisco. They're trying to get the oil refinery shut down in California. There's no doubt about it. They'll probably succeed at some point because, ARCO is just simply going to say, what the hell are we keeping this open for? It's nothing but a pain in the ass because of the California policies, and they're going to let it go. And then it's going to cost, they're going to see $12 or $15 a gallon of gas in California, as opposed to the $5 and $6 gas we've seen recently.
Right.
It's what a crazy amount. All right, so whoops, I did not mean to. Yeah, sorry, jump in there now. Yep.
Says refineries are old, but need 3 to 5 years to build more. Not sure we can make a difference now anyway.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. All right, so for the viewers, we've already played 2 of. Yeah.
Did I jump off? Did I fall off again?
We're kind of losing you a good bit right now. Yeah. Sorry. All right, but we got 5 minutes left. So just before we close, just for the viewers right now, we played 2 of the songs. We got Lionel Richie's "Stuck on You," and then we have whatever it was that Anthony selected, which was so brutal. I'm just going to quickly play a short snippet of the last 2. And if you all in the comments want to say which one you would play, if you could had climate protesters locked in your business, I'm interested which one you all find is the worst. So this is from Linnea. We have Dr. Fauci, "Give Us Vaccines," a true just jam.
Audio?
Oh, you're not getting it? All right, thank you for letting me know.
Dr. Fauci, give us vaccines. Help all the people who have been quarantined. We'll wear our masks and we'll have to stay distant. We'll wash our hands and we'll be more resistant. Fauci, yes, promise.
Oh man, they might like this. They might be like, "Oh, this is a good song. I love its message."
I'm sure that would be very entertaining to those gluons out there.
Oh man. And then let me pull up the last one we have. This one was my selection. I thought it would drive me pretty crazy after 1 or 2 listens, but here we go.
Oh, the Jetsons.
I'm not saying it's a bad intro, but just how like again and again and again this would kill me.
We were promised 60, 70 years ago to have flying cars. Where the hell is my flying car? I've been waiting for that for so long.
I feel like the 10th to 20th time of hearing like his boy Elroy would just drive me absolutely insane. I don't know if any of you have in the comments before we close, just think which one's the worst. Or have any more suggestions, throw them in there right now. But outside of that, do any of you have anything you want to add before we wrap up for the week? Nope. All right, Fauci, you're fired. Oh man, I wish I kind of had a Donald Trump, The Apprentice clip to make something out of that. All of our food was to be pill form. How about the guys singing "No F's to Give"? I don't know what that is, Bogus, but I'm pretty sure it's probably atrocious. It's just Mr. Sandman comes from female Casey Royals fan. I know Enter Sandman. I don't know Mr. Sandman. All right, whatever. I like these suggestions. Oh, one more. Back to the Future Part 2 said we'd have flying cars in 2015. We're just trying to keep our gasoline now. Like flying cars, it's like, can we just even power the cars that we currently have? Yeah, we're going backwards. Fauci will burn in the course. I don't think he'll burn, but all right. Well, thank you all for joining Climate Change Roundtable this week. We're live every Friday. Oh, the Jetsons theme is a great jam, a pretty complicated composition. Great syncopation. Love the 2-beat triplet piano. But that, Jim, you definitely copied and pasted that. That's too complex of analysis too quick.
Stop showing off, Jim.
I know, right? That's all right. Well, thank you all for joining Climate Change Roundtable. We're live every Friday. We weren't live last Friday, but we had our benefit dinner. So we're usually live every Friday, covering the not so mainstream take on climate change. Steve, thanks for joining this week. It's always great to have you on the show. Yeah, Anthony, Linnea, thanks for joining as usual. Sterling, who hasn't been here for a while, I believe will finally be back next week. So you can all get excited for that. But outside of that, we will see you all next week.